This is Docere Digest Podcast, breaking down health concepts. This podcast is brought to you by Docere Life Center. This innovative clinic is finding new solutions to the evolving challenges mankind faces in the 21st century. By utilizing cutting-edge technology and testing, they find root causes and also offer treatment with energy and nutrition. What is the mission? To dynamically change lives for the better while impacting families for generations. The information shared directly or indirectly in the Docere Digest podcast is not to be understood as or misconstrued as medical advice. This information is not a replacement for your current health provider who is acutely aware of your current health state and course of treatment. Any information shared about a product or service discussed by any host or guest on this podcast is not to be interpreted as a doctor-patient relationship.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kyson Frank. Welcome to another episode of Docere Digest. Today we're going to discuss one of the most important things in our lives, water. So today we have Dr. Kelly Halderman with us today, and she's going to be speaking a lot about her vast knowledge on the subject and how it affects our lives and our health. So let me introduce Dr. Kelly Halderman here. She has a background in functional medicine, earning her medical doctorate in 2007 and completing family practice medicine internship with the University of Minnesota in 2009. She is an international educator in the area of integrative and precision health. Dr. Halderman also has a traditional naturopathic medical degree from KCNH. She holds certifications in the methyl-genetic nutrition by the Nutrigenic Research Institute and certification from the American Functional Neurology Institute in functional neurology and neurofeedback. She is an active member in the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, president and founder of the American Association for Nutraceutical Formulators, as well as a member of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. Dr. Halderman also has a doctorate in clinical nutrition, is also board certified in clinical nutrition by the CNCB, has certification in plant-based nutrition from Cornell University, and health coaching certification from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. She also has a comprehensive experience in nutraceutical science and formulation, creating and educating on novel formulations for consumers, practitioners, and professional associations, such as the NFL Hall of Fame. Former physician turned executive level biotech expert, she currently serves as WIO's Chief Health Officer, a health conscious company that harnesses the power of BDD electrolysis to augment the most precious molecule on the planet, water. So Dr. Halderman, what in the wide world of water are we dealing with?
Well, you guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm just really a big fan of all of yours, and to have a discussion about my favorite topic in the whole world, water, is just an honor. And I will say this is that I think when we as clinicians have the water talk with our patients, they sort of roll their eyes and kind of get a zombie look on their face, like boring, not important. Sure, I drink some water, but it's really the essence of life. It's how our cellular machinery works. We're 60 to 70% water. And so I think it's really underrated. And so if someone hears a topic of this podcast and they're thinking, oh, I've heard everything, stop. You haven't heard nothing. We know so little really about water. It floors me. I am deep in the research. The company I work for, WIO, we are the global leader in water research. And what we know about it, how it works, we're just getting started. And so I want to today just bring in awareness to obviously hydration, but then we're going to go beyond that. And we're going to talk about properties that we owe this electrolysis. What is it? What is it doing? What is it adding to the water, so that you're not just getting hydration, you're getting anti-inflammatory properties, anti-aging, and more exercise performance and more by just drinking regular water, which we're transforming. So it's just a great topic, I think, for everybody to be refreshed on and then get brand new information too.
Awesome.
So, Dr. Kelly, a couple of things I want to bring up as we kind of go into this topic, because most people, like you said, think, well, yeah, I drink fluid, I drink water. And when we talk about to our patients and clients to hydrating them, their concept is as well, whatever is liquid is water. So whatever is liquid counts, right? And we talk about the motility of things. And when we talk about water itself, we look at water as either a sustainer of life or a rewarder of life if we consume it right. And we've talked a lot about water in its stale form, its stagnant form, its non-motility form, right? Mm-hmm. It loses life. In fact, we get bad things that start developing within that. And we've always used the concept of a dirty pond versus a flowing stream, right? Mm-hmm. So in that concept, we talk about the flotility of fluids in our body, and we can reference that to a lot, and we will here in just a moment. But when we talk about the flotility, you mentioned our bodies are 60 to 70% water, and that's in a healthy state. Right. An unhealthy state, that there's a lot less water in the body and everything slows down. And we start talking about the motility, or what I refer to as the flotility of the body. We're talking about blood, we're talking about bowels, we're talking about urine, we're talking about lymphatic tissue, we're talking about hormones, we're talking about neurotransmitters. And that leads me to this question for you. Since water is so important, and we look at water as being H2O, 2 hydrogens to 1 oxygen, what is it that hydrogen in water really does for us? How does it do, or what does it do to either give us life, sustain life, or make us stay healthy? If you could answer something along that line, I'd appreciate that.
Really, really great question, Dr. Ben. Right, when we were taught in second grade that water is H2O, we're really underappreciating really what water is, and that water is a conductor. Water carries frequency. You just talked about like that stagnant pond versus flowing water. And, we can get into that, and how, there's something called the fourth phase of water, in that, they say that when you cut someone open, you don't see water gushing out, right? But it's in that fourth phase, that liquid crystalline type phase of water that's very important to life. But so then again, when you're looking at the structure of water, H2O, there's a lot of different moving parts in there. It's really free flowing. And so the process of electrolysis, what that does, and so it sounds a little bit scary, but what we're using is a diamond coated with boron. And so we're using electrolysis to break those H2Os up and create new biomolecules. Now, one of the new biomolecules that we're creating is hydrogen, molecular hydrogen, not like atomic bomb hydrogen, not like dangerous hydrogen, but one of the species is that molecular hydrogen. Now, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of papers published on the positive impacts molecular hydrogen has on health. I mean, from everything to wound healing, looking at studies in liver health, reversing some of the downstream effects of metabolic syndrome. So some of your glucose regulations, your insulin, your body composition. Molecular hydrogen is so tiny, it can diffuse. It can go anywhere in the body. There's Parkinson models, in vivo models that show that molecular hydrogen helps with that. Over in Asia, they're way ahead of us. They've been using molecular hydrogen for years and years, and it's actually one of the mainstay treatments for stroke. They actually have people inhale molecular hydrogen. And so, again, when you're using that electrolysis process, you will get, and not all electrolysis is the same, right? So ours doesn't leach any heavy metals in there. We're actually restructuring the water into that liquid crystalline structure, so it's naturally more hydrating. But again, like the structure of what we're doing is we're breaking it apart, and again, we're creating the molecular hydrogen. We're creating hydrogen clathrates, which is like a cage. And we're using high-level scanning, tunneling microscopy at partners all over the world to really look at some of the aspects of our water that's completely different. And then here's my job, is to apply it to human health. Like, what are we seeing? What are we seeing when we're actually ingesting water with that hydrogen? So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and there's just a couple follow-up as we kind of walk into this. So one of the things we know about the stomach, for example, is the stomach truly only absorbs 2 things, if you will: water and then very refined sugars. So when we look at the concept of how we absorb the hydrogen out of the water into the stomach, we know that it's going to assist us in hydrochloric acid, our digestibility, to start breaking down fatty acids and proteins. So it's significant that we talk on a couple different factors. Timing of water, right? So for example, it's been theorized over the years that if you drink too much water when you're actually eating or consuming fats or proteins, it slows down the process. There's some thoughts about drinking before All right, so we hydrate before we actually consume those foods to turn on the hydrochloric acid, turn on the digestibility of that. But I'm going to go a step beyond that and say, all right, once we do that, then the hydrogen doesn't stop. All right, we know it goes on through the stomach. It goes down into the interstitial space. It gets up into the liver. It gets into energy production. It gets into hormone production. It gets into neurotransmitter production. So when people think that, yeah, I drink a glass of water a day, and if we just take the formula of 60 to 70% of a body, and you think about a 100-pound person, that means to stay healthy, they need 60 to 70 ounces of hydrogenated water just to maintain their current level. If they have illness or sickness or other problems going on, then they need to increase that fluid content so that we give it time to heal that. So I'd just like to hear your take on how the hydrogenated water that we are recommending or that we're consuming and we're drinking, how does that speed up the healing process? You mentioned about that when we cut it open, we don't see it gushing out, but it's in that interstitial fluid, which means it's necessary for every aspect that goes from whether we're breathing, absorbing, or digesting, right? That's a pretty heavy aspect of what water does for us.
Right. And we can go down so many different ways with this, but I think one of the top two would be, again, when we're consuming water that is like tap water, that's stagnant, it's in a form where it's like when we eat processed foods, it's like a language to our body. Processed foods, body's like, what the hell do I do with this? When you're having like an apple, the body's like, I got it. I understand what to do with this. It's in its whole form. And so when you're drinking a water that's been restructured to that native, understandable process, it's flowing actually, the water's flowing through the aquaporins faster. So you're looking at increased hydration when you're using aquaporins, like that system. And so, every cell is surrounded by that fourth phase of water. And like you said, if you're dehydrated, you have extra needs, you're literally compromising the integrity, the function of every single one of the cells in your body. So you have to get that right. And then, so the other answer is that we can look at when molecular hydrogen is ingested, it's also a signal cascade molecule, meaning it sets off a domino effect. So it's not like, okay, molecular hydrogen has to go and act on this receptor. It's that it can actually act on a receptor that acts on a receptor that causes protein expression and so on and so forth. And that's pretty complicated, but that's one of the mechanisms too. It's not just lock and key. It's like domino effect. And then you're going to see these one of the biggest positive attributes, because I talk about bile till I'm green in the face. I talk about bile and bile transport and how we have to manufacture bile and how bile is 99, 98, 97% aqueous. So one of the ways that we're manufacturing bile and we're getting that all right is through the MRP2 transport protein that lies on the canicular membrane of the liver going into that bile caniculus, right? That MRP2 channel is actually activated. It works better to get your bile, to get your trash out of your body when molecular hydrogen sets off that cascade. Molecular hydrogen also increases acts on your NRF2. So your NRF2 would be that anti-aging pathway, the pathway of antioxidants, where when you act on that pathway now secretes or makes rather glutathione, superoxide dismutase. It's a cascading effect. So now you're having an upregulation in your antioxidants, which kind of leads us down into like the aging effects of drinking water that's rich in molecular hydrogen. But I do want to get across the point is that WEO water is not even comparable at all to any other molecular hydrogen water on the market. We have so many more species. We're restructuring the water. Our robust data is 15 years deep in plants and animals, everything that you're eating, everything that we're consuming, we intend to, and we are showing very positive results in all that food chain all the way up to us. And then again, the studies in humans, I think that they're really robust. And that's why I joined this company. It was just absolutely floored at the data.
So let's bring this down to a more simple level, because we got pretty deep on that. And I agree that's significant, that's important. Most people think water is water. And there's the old joke as well, how do you make water less wet or how do you make it more wet? or how do you make more water, right? And you talked about, you briefly mentioned about what I call the clusterization of water, where you get these molecules that get bound up by these different ions or bonds that are in water that actually inhibit our ability to absorb water. And therefore, we get different crystallizations, we get different things that bad water does to us in our body, in our bloodstream, et cetera, all right? Mm-hmm. What is the significance of making sure that we have either purified water, reverse osmosis water, or molecular changed water? Give us just a little bit about how that's significant to not only sustaining life, but to continue to generate the longevity of life. Somebody will talk on here in just a moment. But we'll talk about that aspect of how having the right kind of wet water actually intensifies the body's ability to repair and regenerate. So if you could touch on that, and just so our listeners can understand that we think we drink water like bottled water or tap water or well water or smart water or energy water. Yeah. There's a lot of confusion out there on, well, what do I go grab and start drinking? You know, do I get it from the tap? Do I get filtered water? Give us just a kind of feel on that, if you could, on the significance of having the proper water.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly relevant question, because the purity of our water is swiftly declining. Plastics in the water, PFAS in the water. And so, of course, water purity just in itself. So let's put that in a category: water cleanliness, water purity. Of course, your tap water, you can go to your government website and look up what chemicals have been found in it, and then you can apply appropriate filtration. Some places, you could get away with having a charcoal filter. Some other places, like where I live, I have to have a reverse osmosis to get out all the chemicals and such. I live by 3M company, and they did a lot of dumping in the 1980s. And so really, that's an area of water that you have to make sure that you're getting a water that's been some sort of filter. Reverse osmosis is great. However, reverse osmosis can mean that it's taking all of the naturally occurring minerals out. So you'd want to have to then remineralize it. Also, it's, again, dead water, what we refer to as dead water. There's a lot of different processes that can revitalize water, but one of them, again, sitting on your desk, is that WEO bottle. So, of course, filter your water, make sure you're drinking water that is as cleanly as you can. I think in this day and age, people do grab like the Dasanis and the Smart Waters and things. And guys, guess what? We have landfills and ocean that have like a name, for that giant plastic mass that's going on. We have to be better stewards of the earth. We got to get our stuff together here and realize that when we're picking those up off the shelf, first of all, you guys are probably thinking in your head, they're full of BPAs, so full of estrogens. And if it says BPA free, let me PSA here, it's just a different type of plastic. This is just a different name. So drinking out of bottled waters, guys, that's for the birds. Like that, I mean, there's so many reasons why we have to be better stewards. Again, it's full of plastics. So I'm not a fan of that. If you go to findaspring.com, you can find natural spring water from a glacier that's in your area. Hopefully it's close to you. I live in St. Paul. 3 miles down the road is a spring, a glacier spring. So you'd be surprised. You can go there and find that water, and then you can use glass bottles. Again, the WEO bottle is a glass bottle. So you're cutting down on the BPAs and the plastics in the water. When it comes to, again, like taking that stagnation, so like cleanliness, and we have like environmental impact, and then that stagnation. I think that it's like too bad we just look at it, water's water. If you had a microscope, if you had the scanning, tunneling microscopy that our engineers and our scientists, PhD scientists that are doing, it would blow your mind. It would absolutely blow your mind. Water is not water. We just don't perceive it, but your body does. Your body knows the exact difference. And so I think that's an important point, Dr. Ben, is that cleanliness, and then really how are we bringing it alive? Let's just keep it really simple. How do we bring back that natural living water? You can use WEO technology. There's other technologies where you put it under the moon, and I'm not quite sure about that. But some of the techniques that bring water back alive into like that natural crystalline state, they actually have shown to reverse biological age. So with using glycans, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but that just means that it's important. It's important that your water is truly alive and digestible and tangible to your body.
Awesome. So it behooves our listeners that this isn't the whole topic on water, but this is just the beginning phase. Got to start searching and seeking better water to drink from. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Craig.
Well, that kind of ties right into what I want to ask about, because you talked about aging and that type of stuff. Obviously, you figured that whole key out, because with all you've done, you must be about 80 and you don't look anywhere near it. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, tell us what are the hallmarks of aging, and how does this whole process impact those?
So I think aging is it's a tricky question. It's like, what does it look like? Why are we aging? And so someone brilliant came along by the name of Dr. Carlos Oteen in 2013. And he wrote a paper because that challenge to like define how it looks, like, different aspects of it was really tough. His paper, I encourage everybody to read it. It's really good on the hallmarks of aging. So he goes through, and in 2013, he had 9, right? This January, he came out with 3 more. So now we have 3 processes that we can understand. And when we understand something, we can, and there's not really a better term, maybe manipulate it or nip it in the bud, or, it's like when we know better, we do better. So those 12 hallmarks of aging, when I started to read about those, I thought, wow, there is a lot that the antioxidant properties of WEO water, there's actually processes that have been shown to be combated and reversed. And so we're going to get into the hallmarks of aging, but really kind of to set the stage is that WEO water is an antioxidant. And the first hallmark of aging is really when your DNA is under assault. We're full of, unfortunately, full of toxins, and we just get inundated air and water and the stuff we put on our bodies and things. And so our DNA, our genetic blueprint, it gets damaged. When that gets damaged, it leads to bad things. And one of those things can be cancer, but aging of itself and the properties of WEO water, they've been shown in ex vivo studies to actually protect your DNA and your RNA. And I think it has to do a lot with the mechanism, again, of that crystalline structure and it being in that form. But WEO water is a selective antioxidant, meaning that it's only quenching the antioxidants in your body that aren't involved in cell signaling, because some of them are important. So when you're downing all your antioxidants, you heard it here first. Think twice. You probably heard it from these brilliant doctors too, but think twice, because you don't want to, there's a balance. Everything's a balance.
Right.
Ready? I mean, we've heard that's yin and yang. You do not want to flood your body with antioxidants. That's not a good strategy for anti-aging. It's that balance, but really like that genomic instability, we have to protect ourselves.
Especially since the hydrogen is affecting all that anyway. So energy production, we talk about energy production, and hydrogen's a key factor for that. So if we're going to have enough energy to stay young or to repair ourselves, we need that appropriate amount of hydrogen into our system to make that in the mitochondria.
I think you got it.
The other thing it's interesting too is if you talk about water being dead, why would we think we're going to have life from dead water?
Ooh, that's good.
So
really
it's
good.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the whole concept is if you're putting death within you, you're going to express death as well.
Ooh, that's so good. That's so relevant in nutrition, and that's like a very good philosophy, is that we want to put life in. And then moving on to like some of the other, I'm just going to highlight a couple that I think are really cool of the hallmarks of aging. So we have like our DNA is being assaulted. Obviously, that's going to lead to aging. And then telomere attrition, meaning that there's these telomeres, they're like the end of your shoelace, and they're like caps. And then every time your DNA has to replicate, and it replicates more when you're under attack, when you have lots of free radicals, not enough antioxidants, those get shorter. And when those telomere caps get shorter, that's a process of aging. There's actually companies that test your telomere length to see like how close you may be to like death, or just kind of give you an idea. So there's been studies in human beings showing that that component, that molecular hydrogen that's in the water, will actually attenuate that. So you get to have longer telomeres by drinking. You're smart. You drink water that brings life. I think that's a great way to put it.
So I find it very fascinating as we're talking about this and getting the water into our body, but how do we start? And I know you guys are doing studies on it, and you guys are putting it into the crops and into the animals and things like that. So we're not just drinking living water, to say, versus dead water, but we're also eating those water in our other crops, stuff like that. Is that something that's coming in the future that we're going to start looking at ways to start doing that? Or do I got to start having a garden in my backyard and start just each plant gets a little bit here and there?
So picture it's like the world powered by WEO. So we really have a grand vision because we really believe in our technology. And for 15 years, we've been seeing it. We're already in some of those companies that will remain nameless right now, but that's making the plants and the food on your table. That's causing increased egg production in chickens. That's causing a better in quality of meat, less chemicals and pesticides and things used in food production. So we're cutting that all out by giving this living water, giving this water it blows our minds, like what we see in all these different animal industries. And it's pretty soon you're gonna on your chicken, it's gonna say like given wheel water, but lots of really cool stuff. And that's, I mean, we have to feed a growing population, and our food prices are ridiculous. So you think, we have studies showing that we're increasing egg productions and we're getting healthier animals and healthier plants. And I mean, I'm all in. I don't know about you guys.
You are what you eat and drink, right?
Yeah. So are they coming out with a WEO shower head by any chance?
Oh, well, that's in our future. So is the pet bowl. I will say this, guys, if you have animals, if you start giving them the WEO water, they're not going to want to go back. Like I have a whole house full of animals, and we tried to push them, back to whatever they were drinking before. And they were like, we did a test, bowl of WEO water, bowl of regular. They went right for the WEO water. They're smart. So yeah, we're going to be doing a pet product shower head. We have some really great studies on skin health. But of course, if you're tackling this is the really cool thing. If you're addressing these hallmarks of aging on a cellular level, like that's like foundational, right? So if we are quenching the most dangerous free radical in the body, the hydroxyl radical, if we're quenching peroxynitrates, which are all adding to aging, I mean, that's like the foundation. So it's like whatever, chronic diseases that everybody's pretty much headed for. I mean, 1 in 3 people have pre-diabetes. It's like, we need a better strategy, something that is more foundational. And that's what I see WEO water as, is that we're looking at all the lens of what makes us age. And of course, what makes us age makes our body break down, makes us more susceptible to those chronic diseases, cancer, cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, and so forth. And so you want to be on the preventative side. Maybe it's not like sexy to be like, I'm going to drink my water, but I'm telling you, like when you drink this water, you're doing that.
Well, when we touch about what Dr. Craig brought up on the dead water, and just of the nature that you were just talking about, Dr. Kelly, we talk about things like adaptability. We talk about genetic dysfunction. We talked about morphology. We talk about all these different things that you're either turning on the bad cycle of life, the aging process, or you're turning on the good side of life, the recreative or the corrective process, if you'll look at that. So, and it seems so silly, but when you think about just water has that ability, it has those properties to go through and either give you life or give you death. Wow. I mean, it's really important that our listeners understand water is not soda pop. It's not phosphoric acid. It's not alcohol. I mean, we can get some benefits of some of the wine. We can get some of the benefits of some of those things, resveratrol and all these other components. But it's all based upon that foundation you just said, and that is the water that's in us, because that's key to life. No planet lives without water.
That's right.
No animal, no being that we know of lives without water. So,
when we go looking for life on other planets, what are we looking for?
Water.
We're looking for water. Absolutely. And that, you brought up a really good point, Dr. Ben, about the processes like activating, the site of health or looking at the site of illness. And I think it's important to talk about autophagy briefly. So autophagy is that cleanup process. I always explain it to my clients and patients in the past is like little cellular vacuums that are going all over your body and cleaning up the debris. Because when we are replicating our cells, when we are making new proteins, we leave a lot of debris behind. And our body has this beautiful mechanism God gave us to clean it up. The problem is that autophagy can become really impaired. We're not going to go into mTOR autophagy. Maybe we could do a different time. But there's a lot of things you're doing, like overeating, high fructose corn syrup, too much EMF, too much iron fortified foods. A lot of those things can really affect that cellular cleanup. And so you end up with a very dirty body that doesn't
Sludge.
function well. Think of if
Right.
you're trying to like build a house in a garbage dump. Like it just doesn't work. And so a component of the WEO water has been shown to activate that cellular cleaning that we all need. And that's tied to Lyme disease, chronic Lyme disease, and mold and things like that. So I think that's a really neat mechanism that, backs up what you're saying.
So, Dr. Kelly, I had a question. You were talking earlier about how there are different types of electrolysis, and you were talking about how other companies do things a little differently. I know there might be some trade secrets or anything, but can you expound a little more on how yours is different and how not only that affects some of these aging processes and that cascading effect that you were talking about, but how does that just generalize over detoxification and purification of the body?
Sure. Really important question. So we are membraneless, meaning that we are actually not only capturing the anode products, but the cathode. So to make it simple, we're in our water, we don't throw anything out. A lot of companies just take like the molecular hydrogen. We actually have dissolved oxygen in our water as well. There's some studies to support that dissolved oxygen can have some health benefits. They're not as robust as the molecular hydrogen, but so I keep saying we're way more than just that molecular hydrogen, because again, we're taking the components, and dissolved oxygen that's been used in farming and plants. It has a really lot of good data there. So we're taking that, and that membraneless means it's all together, like all the components of it are together. And so also then our Swiss technology is a diamond coated with boron. And when you electrolyze that, that's great, because a lot of companies out there, they shall remain nameless, when they're electrolyzing, meaning that current is going in it, you're getting heavy metals. You're leaching heavy metals into the water. So like, yay, I'm getting maybe some molecular hydrogen, but oh, I didn't know I was getting lead and cadmium, in there. And you can't see it. You literally can't see it.
So how are those things affecting us when we get those in there, just for our listeners that aren't aware,
Yeah, heavy metals they interfere with everything on a cellular level. I mean, we could go and talk, but they just interfere with your normal cellular processes. They, like from I mean, really, we could go down a big rabbit hole, but I will just say, heavy metals, again, we spend a lot of times as doctors getting those out of people because they're not good and they're not healthy, and they can cause a lot of problems. So, having that aspect of the water where we're not using anything harmful. I think that's why we've had 15 years of just absolutely amazing results, is that we're, again, blending the two together, which is novel and patented. And, we're seeing that downstream effect of having both entities.
That's great. I also have another question. So we kind of touched on this again with Dr. Ben earlier, how water is so important for energy. And again, I think that's where most people in our society are struggling the most, is energy. Wake up tired, go to sleep tired, all day tired. Anything else happens, you're even more tired. And we're always struggling with energy. And I think a lot of it goes back to that dead water, the dead stuff we're putting inside of us. We're literally leading ourselves towards death with what we put inside us. But how is it specifically, or how can we talk through kind of some of that energy production process and why both hydrogen and oxygen are extremely important in that aspect?
Yeah, and I think, looking at cellular respiration and what's going on in your mitochondria, I mean, we have an epidemic where even just long haul numbers are like 20 million people. And look at all the chronic fatigue. And then on top of that, just the other people who are struggling with energy production. I think a lot of it does come down to absolutely nutrition. I think that there's a role in glucose regulation, how people just are not good at turning fat into fuel. So, water can help with that. There's been some really great studies showing that people who are hydrated have easier time losing weight. That's probably for a lot of different reasons. Again, like their bile's flowing, their toxins are moving, they're all, their guts probably working better. But, you're looking at the cellular mechanisms, like your machinery, to kind of keep it simple. It just relies on having that balance of H2O and being in a state where it's not, you're not impacting, you're not trying to like move something along that's really impaired. It's like trying to drive an old rusty car down the lot. It's just not going to work as well. And people, again, we need to really focus in because there's just so many people. I mean, I know I could use extra energy. I got a lot of kids and a full-time job and all of that. And so, people look at like, okay, let's do CoQ10 or let's do that. It's like, no, let's go back to the basics, right? Like, let's get your cellular machinery working. Again, there was a study with molecular hydrogen showing that it did help regulate glucose sensing. So when we're eating a standard American diet, we're losing that. We're losing the glucose sensitivity. So it can actually help with that on that level. But it's just very essential. And I'm sure Dr. Ben, Dr. Kyson, you guys are all very, very biochemical experts. So let's let you riff on that one too.
I'm going to use a term called selective prioritization. And what I mean by that is that when you give the body all the right raw materials, let's go back to the basics, and you give it what it needs, it knows what to do with it. Now, I like the fact that we have both the hydrogen and the oxygen combined within that, without the cellular membrane, because we need both of those factors. I mean, hydrogen left without oxygen can go amok or run awry. And so just keeping that contained in that as we're consuming that, the body knows what to do with it. And it has the ability to say where I need that, whether it's the energy produced side of that, the hormone side, the antioxidant side, whether it's the neurotransmitter side, the brain. There's so much stuff going on with the brain right now. And we talk about how the degradatory effects of having dead water is actually killing the brain, right? And we look at that and we go, how can we turn these things back on? And you give this body the right kind of water. That selective prioritization says, take some here, take some there. Okay, I need more over here for now. Got that under control, move it over here. And I like that part, especially when I get into the mRNA, the tRNA, and the DNA aspect of all this. If we're going to talk about slowing down aging, selective prioritization is really key for what we're doing here inside this body. And it just comes from simply drinking the right kind of water. That's the beauty of it.
That's right. That's right. And maybe that's a good place to mention cellular senescence. And so when your cells are under attack, when they're being, the oxidative stress, let's say, from the toxins and things, is that they're going to reach this point called the Hayflick limit. It means that your cell has divided all it can divide. And it does that to protect itself. And it gets to that point and it doesn't divide anymore. And it turns into what is referred to as a zombie cell. The zombie cell is not metabolically active anymore, but it's in your body and it secretes these things called SASP factors. It's called senescence associated secretory phenotype factors. Those are nasty. Those, they are related to Alzheimer's, other chronic conditions, metabolic conditions, where all they do is just sit there and spew off all these inflammatory compounds. And what we're looking at is it spurs on aging, first of all, but you can think about senescence in the brain. Really, you want to slow that down. So first of all, you want to get your lifestyle right. You want to get your epigenetics under control. But wheel water has been shown to actually in ex vivo studies to protect our cells from actually getting to that senescence state, which is good because we can do all we can. But again, we live in a pretty dirty world.
It's building that house in the dump again. And you think about all the debris and the decarboxylated state, not getting your debris or your zombie cells out is death. I mean, that's what creates dead water, or it keeps creates the pond scum and all these concepts. Right. So good, Dr.
That's right. That's right.
Well, at Docere Life Center, we're always looking for new ways to help our patients get bigger, better, faster, stronger. That's one of our hallmarks, is we're always continuing to seek out new ways. We don't like to rest on our laurels. So when I came across this and I started looking into it, I'm like, okay, this is very interesting, especially when we talked about the cellular matrix and just how our bodies work, even in light production in our bodies as far as signaling and everything else. And so when energy medicine, which next month we're going to do a 6-part series on energy medicine, we're going to go into a little bit more of how the cellular matrix works and talking about how important this is for this form of water here. So talking about energy medicine is kind of interesting because Dr. Kelly is really the one that talked me into pursuing energy medicine. And
I'll never forget the day. Never.
because before it was like, okay, you guys are a bunch of quacks, whatever else, No, but it was very interesting because we had some very deep conversations in ways that really made me look at that and say, okay, maybe this is something I need to look into. And as God does, he opens doors. And I don't know if I would have stepped through that door without your encouragement. So because of that, Docere Life Center exists. And this podcast exists. So thank you for being a part of that.
It's full circle.
There it is.
I do remember the conversations we had, and I just intuitively knew, God's hand was with us in that conversation, and that, something got sparked in your brain, Dr. Kyson, and you've been such a blessing. You've been a blessing to my family. You really have a gift. All the doctors on staff here, you guys are absolutely top notch, excellent. You go above and beyond. I mean, really, in looking at these processes, you're so strong in science. All of you are so strong, and then you bring it to the next level. Like, you're gonna have a series on energy medicine. You bet you I will be there learning from you on that series as well. So again, I thank you for your time and letting me come in and talk about something that you're already very aware of, but something that a technology, when you hear about something, we do our homework, right? We really look into it. We make sure that we vetted the science in our scientific brain. We're making sure that the studies are valid and looking at that, because we all want to bring health to our patients. That's the mission, is to bring people into the state of health so that they can hear the voice of God, right? I mean, because people are so sick and so consumed with their ill health, and they can't love and they can't do the things that they're here to do. So I'm just trying to pass on the gifts that were given to me.
Amen. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
So there will be a link below. If you are interested in more information, you can go to the website there and check out all the studies, all the other stuff they're doing. They have a foundation, all their research. So there's so much they're involved in. So yeah, go check out this company there. And if you want to order a bottle, check it out, and I highly recommend it. Being on it now for 5 days, I got mine in on Monday, and I've really been hitting it hard. And even with our energy testing that we do, it's fascinating because I can fill it with water and I don't test to it. But as soon as I hit that little button twice, it lights up and goes to work, and all of a sudden my body cannot get enough. I drank like 1.5 gallons that first day, and I'm just like, still my body wanted more of it. It's like, this is crazy. I'm going to the bathroom every 15 minutes, so I was flushing stuff out. Yeah, so it was working. I was like really amazed with how this works, which goes back to the frequencies of everything and what we deal with. And so it's been very exciting. So I'm really excited to start promoting this in our clinic for our patients to start looking at it as another way to help them live better, longer lives and kind of achieve their purpose that God has for them here on this planet. So
awesome.
I love what you said to Dr. K. It's like you drink it in and you feel a couple things. One, you feel life coming in, and you feel life getting turned on, and you feel debris getting out.
Take that death out. So
and isn't that the nature of life?
It is.
Bring life in and eradicate disease. That's what I love.
There we go.
My flotility was very high.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes, we noticed. No. Mine as well.
All right. Anything else? Any other questions? Dr. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. We'll have to do it again on some other subject matters. You have such a vast knowledge. I always enjoy discussing interesting topics with you. So thank you so much for being here today.
I really appreciate you guys. Take
bless.
care.
Thank you for listening to the Docere Digest podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. You can also find all the episodes and show notes over at docerelifecenter.com. While you're on the website, also be sure to check out the blog, where you'll find videos and articles to help you proactively rebalance your health.